All right, it is predicted that U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on April 4th, 2024, and that her death in a plane crash will lead to the rise of the Antichrist, Barack Obama, to the president's office again as the 48th president, predicted to be on April 29th, 2024. In this video, I will tell a story that God has demonstrated through his big picture of signs involving famous actor and director Clint Eastwood, and also specifically his classic movie that he directed and starred in 1992, the movie Unforgiven, which is a major important prophetic sign from God that is communicating that America is unforgiven. So let's begin with what I wrote. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. If you have already watched this essential introductory information, you can skip ahead 28 minutes. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs. God's big picture of signs is an interconnected web. It is through these connections between related prophetic signs that God is telling very important stories that are revealing very important knowledge. For example, it is through God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that he is revealing the way in which Barack Obama will become the president again, which is through the death of Vice President Kamala Harris in a plane crash. For many years, God has been painting this particular picture through his prophetic signs, and along the way he has been developing numerous trails of connected signs that are leading to the precise date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Here is a diagram that illustrates one such example among countless examples. As we can see here, God has demonstrated a number of trails of signs that led to August 24th, 2023. It was known ahead of time that there would be a prophetic sign related to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on August 24th. And then on this day, Vladimir Putin was the first public official to confirm that the Russian general and leader of the Wagner Group that attempted a coup of Vladimir Putin died in a plane crash, which hints at the soft coup that has been unfolding in America in recent years. In retrospect, it could have been easily predicted that the Russian general of the Wagner Group would die in a plane crash on August 24th, because it was known that August 24th is 54 days before October 17th, which was another date God was pointing to ahead of time. This is why on August 24th, Trump, God's trumpet, had in 5 months been arrested for the 4th time in the 4th state. It also hinted at the number 54. God has been using in his signs the theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War, who were known for fighting valiantly at Fort Wagner. Hence the Wagner plane crash 54 days before October 17th. As we can see in this diagram, the trail of signs continues on from August 24th to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 24th. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is an example of a story that God is telling that is extremely important. Actually, February 24th ended up being another step in the trail of signs that is leading to May 19th. The date 224 hints at 2 times 24 and hints at G 2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, which is the Greek word for the name Jesus. Greek letters are also numbers, and the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888. The number 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. The other prophetic signs on February 24th also revealed the number 8. This includes the S&P 500 stock market index's close for the weekend at 5,088.80. And the Boston Celtics basketball team's 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team, and the dangerous basketball court storming incident after the 8th ranked Blue Devils college basketball team lost to the Deacon Demons in an upset. Also on February 24th, Trump won the primary for the 8th state to join the Union when he beat the former governor of the 8th state. Trump campaigned in the capital of the 8th state on the day of Harris's third visit to the 8th state this year, which hinted at 3 8s and 888. The name Trump in simple English gematria is equal to 88. Donald J. Trump in English gematria is equal to 888. The S&P 500 stock market index close at 5,088.80 on February 24th hinted at adding 5 times 8 days from February 24th to reach April 4th. As well, one of the many trails of signs that led to February 24th, when the S&P 500 was closed at 5,088.80, was the 13 days connection from Super Bowl 58, in which Taylor Swift, who is known for being obsessed with the number 13, attended her 13th Chiefs game this season. Super Bowl 58 hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13, and also hints at the addition of 5 times 8 days to February 24th, which was 13 days after Super Bowl 58. 5 times 8 days after the stock market was closed at 5,088.80 points was the date 4/4, April 4th. The Antichrist is the 44th president, and also the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. It is predicted that the 44th president will become the president again after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, and the date 4/4 in 2024 was exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at the number 23. After the crash of the Thunderbirds jet that was number 4 in its squad on the date 4/4 in 2018. Thunderbirds jets are F-16s, which hints at 4 times 4. This Thunderbirds jet crashed in the 36th state, and the number 36 hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, as 36 hints at 3 6s, and also it is 6 times 6, and 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Alaska is the 49th state to join the Union. The 49th vice president is predicted to die in a plane crash, which will lead to the return of the 44th president to the White House. And on the date 4/4, Alaska Airlines announced that it had received $4 times $4 million from Boeing for the door that blew out of its plane in January. This announcement regarding $4 times $4 million on the date 4/4 was exactly 4 times 4 days before 2 Japanese military helicopters collided and crashed. In God's signs, helicopter blades are symbolic of the letter X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Bible prophecy. An X helicopter blade hints at 4 points, and 2 helicopter blades hints at 4 and 4. The 2 helicopters and their blades that hinted at 4 and 4 crashed 4 times 4 days after the date 4/4 and the announcement regarding 4 times $4 million. The reason why God is using Japan in his signs is that the land of the rising sun, with a sun on its flag, is symbolism for the coming catastrophic solar flare that will knock out America's power grid, and Japan is symbolism for nuclear bombs, and Japanese anime is symbolism for the coming mass demonic possession of those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. Harris is predicted to crash in her plane in St. Louis, near where the 2 eclipses engendered an X over the nation, and this is predicted to be 29 days after the 2 helicopters crashed. The number 29 is God's way of hinting at 9/11 using only 2 numbers, as the number 2 hints at 1 and 1. On 9/11 in 2001, planes that were on their way to Los Angeles, California, were hijacked and then crashed. Harris is predicted to crash in her plane that will be homeward bound to her $5 million mansion in Brentwood, California, 38 days after the news broke of the death of O.J. Simpson. Simpson was known for the slow-speed car chase that he led homeward bound on the I-5 highway to his mansion in Brentwood, California. News coverage of the chase up the I-5 interrupted the live broadcast of Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals, which was exactly 7 plus 7 times 7 months after the live broadcast of Game 3 of the 1989 World Series in San Francisco was interrupted by an earthquake that caused a section of the I-80 Bay Bridge to collapse between Oakland and San Francisco. In the Bible, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 7 plus 7 times 7 before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment due to an earthquake. The earthquake during Game 3 that broke the I-80 bridge hinted at 3 8s and 888, which hints at the name Jesus. And a bridge is symbolic of the connection between man and God, which is Jesus. A broken bridge is symbolic of the broken connection between man and God. Harris and O.J. Simpson are both from San Francisco, and this is why it is predicted that Harris will die 38 days, which hints at 3 8s, after news broke of the death of O.J. Simpson. The Simpson car chase began after the warrant for his arrest was issued at 11 a.m., and it ended at 9 p.m. in front of his home. The chase that began after the arrest warrant for murder at 11 a.m. and ended at 9 p.m. was 2,643 days before 9/11, because G 2,643 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance is the word that means reconciliation. Through the 9/11 events, God warned America to reconcile with him for its sin and its murder of unborn babies. Harris is the advocate for the murder of unborn babies. She is predicted to die in a plane crash in the city with the area code 314, 38 days after the death of O.J. Simpson on April 11, 2024. April 11, 2024 was exactly 22 years and 7 months after 9/11 in 2001, and 22 divided by 7 is shorthand for pi, which is 3.14, which hints at the area code 314. 22 years and 7 months is also exactly 271 months, and 271 is the 58th prime number. Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash on May 19th, 2024, 85 days after the S&P 500 stock index was closed at 5,088.80 points, which hinted at the number 58. The number 58 hints at the number 85, which is why Harris will die 85 days after the stock market hinted at the number 58. The reason why God is pointing to the death of Kamala Harris with the number 85 is that she will be replaced by Michelle Obama, who will appoint Barack Obama, and Barack Obama first moved to Chicago in 85 after the May 19th Communist Organization was disbanded in 85. This is the reason why Obama hosted the 85 Chicago Bears, as in the 1985 Chicago Bears, at the White House on the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar, exactly 13 years before the Antichrist Obama will be defeated at the Lord's second coming on the Day of Atonement in 2024. The Antichrist is described in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, and 8 plus 5 equals 13. The 85 Chicago Bears lost only one game in their season, and that was in week 13 of the season. The loss was because of Miami Dolphins quarterback number 13. 13 years before the 85 Chicago Bears, the Miami Dolphins became the only team to achieve an undefeated season. Dolphins player number 13 was the Super Bowl MVP that year. In the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king. Obama is well known for being a fan of Chicago sports teams. The 85 Chicago Bears Super Bowl win in January of 1986 began a 30-year cycle in which all of the major sports teams from Chicago won their league's championship. This included the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago White Sox, and Chicago Cubs, all of which ended severe droughts of championship wins and ended supposed sports curses, which hinted at the curse of the Antichrist. And all three of these sports teams visited the Antichrist while he was in the White House. The 30-year pattern was fulfilled 4 days before the 44th president's last day in the White House, when he was presented with jersey number 44 by star player number 44 of the 2016 Chicago Cubs. And 16 equals 4 times 4. Also, the Kansas City Royals have only been crowned kings of baseball twice, and their 2 World Series wins were exactly 30 years apart. Their first win was in 85. The plot of the movie Back to the Future took place in 85, and 30 years later in the future, in 2015, and the movie included a joke about the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, which they finally did win the year after the Royals won in 2015, exactly 30 years after their first win in 85. All of this served to point to the year that the Antichrist king, Obama, moved to Chicago in 85 after the May 19th Communist Organization was disbanded in 85. The truth is that Obama was a full-fledged member of the May 19th Communist Organization, which originated in Bill Ayers' Weather Underground organization. And the truth is that Obama got his start in politics with the help of Bill Ayers for the sole purpose and ambition of subverting the American system in a clandestine communist-style revolution. The May 19th Communist Organization was named after the birth dates of Ho Chi Minh, the leader of Vietnam, and Malcolm X. In God's signs, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash on May 19th. near where the eclipses engendered an X over the nation, exactly 99 years after the birth of Malcolm X on the date May 19th. God uses the number 188 in his signs as H188 in the Hebrew Concordance is the word that means woe! It is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. 99 years is the equivalent of exactly 1,188 months, which hints at H188, woe! The reason why Harris will die at the X engendered by the eclipses, 1,188 months after the birth of Malcolm X, is for God to prove who the real Barack Obama is. Those who have fallen for the lies of Obama and the political left are on their way to hell, and they need to repent immediately. The planes crashed on 9/11 in Lower Manhattan before the New York Stock Exchange in Lower Manhattan opened. On the morning of Tuesday, 9/11 in 2001, the Dow was closed at 9,605 from the end of the trading day on Monday, 9/10 in 2001. 9,605 hinted at 9 and 6 plus 5 equals 11, and therefore hinted at 9/11. It was closed at precisely 9,605.51. This was 0.34 points before its close on the prior trading day on Friday, 9/7 in 2001. The 0.34 points difference hints at 2 times 17, and the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart. On 9/10 and 9/11, the Dow was closed at 9,605.51, 0.34 points below its close on 9/7 at 9,605.85. God did this to point to 0.51 and 0.85 in order to communicate that the Antichrist would be the 51st vice president, who was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization that disbanded in 85. God also did this to point to how the Antichrist would be appointed the 51st vice president through using the 25th Amendment, which is what the date 9/7 hints at, as 97 is the 25th prime number. Exactly 4 plus 4 years, which hints at the 44th president, after the Dow closed at 9,605.51 on 9/11 in 2001. The Dow closed at 9,605.41 on 9/11 in 2009, in the year the 44th president was inaugurated. This difference of 0.10 points hints at 5 plus 5 and hints at the I-55 highway that connects Chicago to Cairo, Illinois, and the area of the country that is nicknamed Little Egypt, where the two paths of the eclipses crossed over each other, which is near where Kamala Harris is predicted to crash on the 99th birthday of Malcolm X. The Dow closed at 9,605.41 on 9/11 in 2009, exactly 99 days after Obama went down to Cairo, Egypt, to deliver a speech to the Muslim world and to tell them that America is no longer a Christian nation. A chapter in the book of Isaiah describes the Antichrist, and it begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt." This 99 days after Obama went down to Egypt to speak to the Muslim world hints at the 99th anniversary of Malcolm X, a militant leader in the Nation of Islam movement that has ties to the communist movement and the May 19th Communist Organization. An X is symbolic of the mark that the Antichrist will compel people to take. 0.51 points and the 51st vice president hints at 51 equals 3 times 17. G317 in Strong's Bible Concordance is the word that means unwillingly, by way of compulsion, by force. On 9/7 in 2001, the Dow was closed at 9,605.85 points. And then on 9/10 and 9/11, it was closed at 9,605.51 points. 4 plus 4 years later, in the first year of the 44th presidency, on 9/11 in 2009, the Dow was closed at 9,605.41 points. The difference between 9,605.85 points and 9,605.41 points is 0.44 points, which identifies the 44th president. Another reason why it is predicted that Kamala Harris will crash near the I-55 and near the X of the eclipses that is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist on the 99th birthday of Malcolm X is that God will be warning of the coming mass demonic possession of those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist that is alluded to in the 9th chapter of the book of Revelation that will be triggered by 5G frequencies. There are about 50 videos related to Harris's predicted crash on this channel that predict that her plane crash will be on February 10th, 2024. Each of these videos tell a different and very important story that everyone needs to know, and these stories are developed through trails of connected signs that led to February 10th, 2024. In other words, the signs connected to February 10th, and then on February 10th, we received the prophetic sign that was expected in advance of February 10th. The prophetic sign on February 10th that was predicted in advance of February 10th was the big news of pop singer Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private jet so that she could attend the Super Bowl. This prophetic plane sign and the important stories that God is telling that relate to this are explained in the must-watch Swift Super Bowl video. For example, it will be explained how Swift's race across the Pacific in her private plane, with the goal of reaching the Super Bowl in time, points to the Amelia Earhart prophetic sign and her disappearance in a private plane as she was flying across the Pacific Ocean with the goal of becoming the first woman to fly solo around the world. The Amelia Earhart video on this channel will explain how the date of Earhart's plane crash on July 2nd, the date 7/2 in 1937, confirms the addition of 7 times 2 days from Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private plane on February 10th to reach the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in her private Air Force plane 7 times 2 days later as she flies across the country. After flying across the ocean, Swift landed her plane at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, and Harris is predicted to crash in St. Louis, near where the paths of the 2 great American eclipses will engender an X, on her flight path from Washington, D.C. to LAX. What I am saying is that when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all 50 of the videos that tell the different stories from God through different trails of signs that led to February 10th. Then watch the Swift Super Bowl video that explains the signs that occurred on February 10th and how they point to the date of Harris's predicted crash on May 19th. What I am saying is that the videos in which it was predicted that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash on February 10th are 100% correct. What I am saying is do not skip these videos that are predicting February 10th. They must be watched. If you do not watch these videos and learn about the important stories God has been telling, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God for Harris's death in a plane crash. Believe me, I know far better than you why God is giving this prediction, and it is so that you learn the information that is contained in these 50 other videos that predicted February 10th. And as we can see, this email that I will be reading was composed on March 31st. All right, so this morning, Twitter, X, offered me a post in which someone mentioned that Clint Eastwood said in an interview in 2012 that, quote, President Obama is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, unquote. He said this to the newspaper for his small western town for which he was once the mayor. All right, so the fact that he was mayor of this small town in California in the western United States, is part of this prophetic sign, as we will see here. In other words, it's this newspaper, in other words, is him. It's symbolic of him because it's the newspaper for the small town, and he was the mayor of that small town. So it's just more prophetic confirmation of the significance of this particular interview, is what I'm trying to say. This story of Eastwood's interview was published 4 plus 4 days after Eastwood's infamous speech at the Republican National Convention, in which he pretended to interview the 44th president on an empty chair next to him on the stage. You may recall this event and the mocking that he received from the left afterwards. Okay, it was a big news story in its time. All right, so again, he was on the stage. He was one of the last important speakers of the National Convention, and he didn't wish to tell anyone what he would say in his speech. He was just invited, and that's because he didn't know what he was going to say, and at the last minute, he decided to do this, which was pretend to interview Barack Obama in an empty chair next to him on the stage. He thought it was a good idea. Okay. So anyway, that interview, which was the first statement he made after his famous or infamous speech on the stage, that interview that was published in his paper in his small town was 4 plus 4 days after his speech. Okay, and that hints at the 44th president. That's why it was 4 plus 4 days, okay, after he pretended to interview the 44th president in the empty chair. The date of Clint Eastwood's Republican National Convention speech was on the date 8/30, August 30th, 8/30 in 2012. This was 9 plus 11 years, which hints at the warning of judgment for America on 9/11. After the release of the Eastwood directed Unforgiven movie that was released on the date 8/3 in 1992. So the two dates rhyme with each other, if you got that. Okay, so the convention speech again was on the date 8/30, 9 plus 11 years, after the movie was released on the date 8/3. And these two 8/3s hint at Jesus. The name Jesus in Greek gematria, is equal to 888. And God has used these patterns or instances of 8 and 3 to hint at this in his big picture of signs. And his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. Okay, so this movie, Unforgiven, was a movie for which he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, for Best Director. He also starred in the movie and was nominated for Best Actor. Okay, so this was a big movie in his career. It is regarded as a classic. It was entered in the National Registry for culturally significant movies, etc. In the Bible, the flood judgment began 1,656 years after Adam. Okay? In this chronology of the story of the creation to the flood. In the movie, by the way, well, for those that just so that you know, for those that aren't Christian and don't know much about Christianity, there are many people, including myself, that don't believe in a young earth. It's not required to believe that the Bible is the Word of God. All right. So in other words, it's still the Word of God, but it's an allegory. It's a story. It's a metaphor. It's not a literal 1,656 years. At least I don't think so. And it's not required, and it still is the Word of God. And this is a number that God has used in the Bible and in His signs for His purposes. Okay, in the movie Unforgiven, the classic scene in which Eastwood's character arrives into the small Old West town is during a rainstorm. Okay, so the movie is associated with a rainstorm. Okay, the iconic scene is when Eastwood's character first arrives into the small Old West town. Speaking of Old West town, right? Because Clint Eastwood was the mayor of the small western town. Okay, and the movie again has this association with rainstorm, and that's of course Noah's flood symbolism. All right. Eastwood's Unforgiven movie was first released in the Westwood neighborhood. I should repeat that. Eastwood's Unforgiven movie was first released in one theater in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles on the date 8/3 in 1992, exactly 1,656 weeks before it is predicted that Barack Obama will become the president again on April 29th, 2024. Obama's return to the White House will be a prophetic sign from the righteous Christian God of the Bible that America is unforgiven. And this connection between the Eastwood movie and the date that Obama becomes the president again is most relevant because of this story God is using to point to the Clint Eastwood quote from the article published in his town's newspaper, which is, once again, quote, "President Obama is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people," end quote. There's so much to be said about this, but we can start from the beginning, which is that he was not born in America. That is not a conspiracy theory. The evidence for that is overwhelming, but the left media is not about journalism. It is political activism disguised as journalism. And the people on the left do not want to hear the truth about Obama, which is why God is using Obama to deceive them so that they go to hell. That is the purpose of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is perceived by people that do not know anything about Bible prophecy as being some sort of obvious Hitler type of person, but that isn't the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. The majority, or I should say the vast majority of people will and do love the Antichrist. There's actually two antichrists, and these people love them both. The first one is Pope Francis. The second one, who gets his power from the first one, as we will soon see, is Barack Obama. Anyway, that is what is going on here. God's plan, the big plan of God's, is to divide people. Jesus said, "Do not think I came to bring unity," which is why the spirit of Antichrist in the left wants to make everyone the same and homogeneous and no differences between genders, etc. It just goes on and on. Group identity politics, communism, socialism, whatever degree or flavor of socialism you want to talk about. It's all this spirit of coming together in a utopia that's alluded to in the Tower of Babel story in the Bible. Come, let us build a tower. The opposite of that is God's plan. Satan's plan is to bring everyone together in the spirit of quote-unquote unity, which isn't the truth, of course. Satan is interested in destruction. But he uses this spirit of supposed unity to achieve his goal. But Jesus said, do not think I came to bring unity, but division. God's plan is to divide the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the chaff. Those that believe the hoax of Barack Obama are purposefully being deceived. It is a test. And by the way, speaking of which, what is President Trump, what was the way in which Trump's popularity first rose? How did he become big in the first place in politics? Which was through calling out Obama, in particular for his non-existent birth certificate, for having been born in Kenya. All right? Because he was. And anyway, that's just scratching the surface. That's just the surface there. That's the sign that people are deceived. The fact that they refuse to look at the evidence for that is a metaphor for refusing to look at the evidence for all kinds of other things. And if you think about it just for a minute, you will know what I'm talking about and alluding to, the things that I cannot talk about, right? On social media, freely, in our present-day totalitarian society, in which the left dictates what is true, because they work for Satan and they don't know it. But let's move on to the second paragraph here. Eastwood said in an interview with his small town's newspaper that, quote, President Obama is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, end quote. By the way, Eastwood perhaps recognized what I first recognized when he was first elected. I knew that although he was the first black president, that he would be, there was zero doubt in my mind, even back in 2008, before I was a born-again Christian, that he would be the last president. There's a saying, people get the government and rulers they deserve. America no longer deserved democracy after this far-left, radical, anti-American person rose out of nowhere to become the president simply because he had black skin and spoke well. It was an abomination, speaking of Obama and the nation. And so it was clear that this was the end of democracy. I was completely surprised when President Trump came onto the picture and won the presidency. Now it is clear that the reason why he came is because he has been trumpeting, as in Trump, the arrival of the Antichrist, who will become the president again after the term of President Trump. Okay, the interview of Clint Eastwood's in which he said this quote, was published on September 7th, 2012, exactly 40 plus 40 months before news broke on May 7th, 2019, that the publish date for Obama's autobiography, A Promised Land, would be delayed. Okay, so we got a connection between published date and publish date, and Obama and Obama. Okay? The movie Unforgiven won 4 Academy Awards and is about the old West. It is a Western movie. On the day as the news about the 44th president's autobiographical A Promised Land was a prophetic sign involving the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, known as the Gateway to the West. So let me repeat that. On the same day as this news came out about the autobiography published date of Obama's Promised Land was the day of this prophetic sign involving the Gateway Arch in St. Louis, which is known as the Gateway to the West. And the movie is about the West. It's a Western movie. In the Bible, judgment on a people symbolically begins at the gate. And judgment is symbolized in the Bible by 3 sets of 7. For example, in the book of Joshua, the Israelites marched around the walls of security once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. There are also actually 3 instances of 3 sets of 7 in the account of the flood judgment. In 2019, the St. Louis Blues hockey team in St. Louis, in 2019, the St. Louis Blues hockey team was a major prophetic sign. And I can't go into all of the details, obviously. That's a whole other very long video in itself. But just take my word for it, the 2019 St. Louis Blues hockey team were a very, very big deal in God's signs. All right? By the way, I believe, yes, there is a video titled something to the effect of Hockey Heart Attack video, okay, and Trump is in the title. You can search for that. And that's a must-watch, actually. It's truly, truly one of the most profound videos. Hopefully you find it. Okay. On May 7th, 2019, the St. Louis Blues, okay, we're talking about this year of the prophetic St. Louis Blues, won their first playoff series in their prophetic path to winning the Stanley Cup. All right. They won their first playoff series, and it was their first playoff series that they had won in, however long in the past. The big story about them is that they rose from last place and had been this perennial loser team, and they were in last place as not long ago, as recently as January of that year. Anyway, the St. Louis Blues won their first playoff series in overtime of Game 7, in which the winning goal was scored by St. Louis hometown hero, player number 7. He is actually from St. Louis. Player number 7 scored the winning goal in Game 7 to win the series in overtime. The game actually started also at 7 p.m. And this game was 7 days before Israel's birthday. Okay, so that's 3 sets of 7. All right. Israel was born exactly 144 years after Lewis and Clark began their expedition out west from St. Louis, which the Gateway to the West Arch in St. Louis commemorates, because they began their expedition in St. Louis exactly 144 years before Israel was born. The Pilgrims saw their arrival in North America as entering their promised land. Okay, so that's why we have a St. Louis sign on the same day as the news about Obama's A Promised Land autobiography. All right? All right. That's just the beginning here, though. And the pilgrims went west, furthermore. Okay? Also, the Lewis and Clark expedition was searching for a waterway passageway to the west, and the Atlantic Ocean, which the pilgrims crossed, is of course a waterway. Their arduous journey across the Atlantic Ocean took 66 days. The Blues won their prophetic hockey game 66 days after the 144-year-old heritage fig tree fell in the historic Central Plaza of Los Angeles on the West Coast. In the Bible, the fig tree represents Israel, God's chosen nation. America is God's chosen nation, and fallen trees symbolize national judgment in the Bible. 144 years before the rebirth of Israel, Lewis and Clark set out to find a water passageway to the West Coast. The movie Unforgiven was first released in Los Angeles on the West Coast, and the movie is known for making a lot of money and only costing $14.4 million to produce, which of course hints at 144. The movie made $159 million and therefore made a profit of $144.6 million. And even the 6, if you will, hints at the 66 days, right? From the 144-year-old tree that fell to the St. Louis sign. Now, one thing here, too, is that the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock 144,000 days. The number 144 is prophetic regarding Israel because there are 12 tribes, and 144 is 12 times 12. And this is why the number 144,000 is very prominent in the book of Revelation in Bible prophecy regarding the end times. And the Pilgrims landed 144,000 days, which is 400 months, if I recall. Exactly. Sorry, 400 years. It's 400 biblical years. And a biblical year in prophecy is 12 months of 30 days each. That's right. So 400 biblical years. And the Israelites went into their promised land after 400 years in Egypt, in the Exodus. That's the other thing here. And the Pilgrims saw their journey to the promised land as also, and they were escaping persecution from the king, political and religious persecution, just like the Israelites that escaped the king of Egypt in the story in the Bible, in the Exodus. So anyway, exactly 400 years, biblical years, and 144,000 days from the day that they landed on Plymouth Rock was the day of this extremely prophetic eclipse over the Atlantic Ocean that traced out an uncanny dividing line between the old and the new world. I show images of this. You can see it if you look it up. Perhaps what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the image right now. All right, so you can see the clear line here that's demarcating the old world from the new world. The reason is that it is pointing to the Pilgrims' crossing of the Atlantic and the spiritual founding of America when they landed on Plymouth Rock. And in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. This means, therefore, of course, that the foundation of America is Jesus. And God is warning America for having departed their foundation, which is Jesus. And that's why this eclipse occurred exactly 144,000 days after the Pilgrims landed, and the eclipse pointed to the Pilgrims. The eclipse, by the way, divided the 4 blood moon tetrads. It was on the first day in the Hebrew calendar, in the civil calendar that divides the year into 2. And also it was the equinox, which divides day and night equally on Earth. And like I said in the beginning, God's plan is division. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to bring unity, but I have come to bring division." This eclipse divides the old world from the new world, and that is confirmed through the divisions that I just explained, dividing the blood moon eclipses, etc. Okay, so that story that I just told about this 144,000 days connection with the Pilgrims is confirmation of the 144 years in between the rebirth of Israel and the Lewis and Clark expedition out west. God has had his hand on American history and its manifest destiny, the story of it expanding westward, etc. And again, in the Bible, fig trees symbolize Israel, and America is a fig tree. It is a chosen nation of God's. It is un-Israel. Okay, God departed Israel and went to the Gentiles, and America is God's Gentile nation that he used to spread the gospel around the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. Okay, so that's why the 144-year-old fig tree collapsed in the historic Central Plaza in Los Angeles 66 days before the St. Louis sign with the blues near the Gateway Arch. Lewis and Clark, 144 years. Got it? Okay. Now, this is all about the West because the arch is the gateway to the West, and Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven movie is a Western movie. All right? And that's why the movie cost $14.4 million, which hints at 144, and made a profit of $144 million. And why it was first released in Los Angeles, in a historic theater. I should have mentioned that, actually. It's a historic theater, which also hints at the historic tree in the historic plaza in Los Angeles. Furthermore, as I mentioned in the next paragraph, I think, Eastwood and the neighborhood in which the movie was released, Westwood, hints at trees, which is another confirmation that this is pointing to this fig tree that fell, that symbolizes judgment for the nation. You see this elaborate weave of prophetic signs and stories that's so beautiful and typical of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is being explained on this channel. Okay, so let's move on to the next paragraph. Eastwood's Unforgiven movie won 4 Academy Awards, and the interview in which Eastwood said that the 44th president, quote, is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated on the American people, end quote, was published exactly 40 plus 40, in other words, hints at the 44th president, before the news about the publish date of the 44th president's a Promised Land. Okay? All right. So, you got that? Eastwood's prophetic movie, his big movie, won 4 Academy Awards, and his quote about the 44th president was exactly 40 plus 40 months before the 44th president's Promised Land news about the publish date, and we were talking about a connection from the publish interview of Clint Eastwood's in which he spoke about the 44th president. Okay, the 44th president is the Antichrist. And in Bible prophecy, the number of the Antichrist is 666. Again, it is exactly 40 plus 40 months in between the published date of Eastwood's article about the 44th president and the news about the published date of the 44th president's autobiography. This 40 plus 40 months connection is the equivalent of 666.6% of a calendar year. That is stunning confirmation that the Antichrist is the king of Egypt. And why do I say that? Because of the title, A Promised Land. The Israelites were escaping the king of Egypt in the Bible, who is a type, a foreshadow for the Antichrist, a symbol for the Antichrist. And that's why his book is titled A Promised Land. It's because the Israelites were escaping the king of Egypt before they entered their promised land. All right? And that's also what will happen soon when God's faithful will be raptured and rescued. In other words, they will not die, they will disappear and go to be with the Lord in the kingdom before the very, very severe part of the tribulation occurs, which will be August 13th, 2024. Okay? The news about Obama's A Promised Land came out 66 days after the 144-year-old fig tree fell in Los Angeles, and Eastwood's Unforgiven movie was first released in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. Eastwood's Unforgiven cost $14.4 million, which hints at 144. Eastwood and Westwood hint at trees, and this hints at the 144-year-old fig tree that fell in Los Angeles. Okay? But what I'm emphasizing here again is that we have this 666.6% of a year connection to a date that is in turn 66 days after the relevant prophetic sign about the 144-year-old fig tree in Los Angeles, because Eastwood's film was released in Westwood in Los Angeles, and the film cost made 144 million, cost 14.4 million. You got the idea, I think, by now. It's truly amazing. The Pilgrim's voyage to their promised land across the Atlantic took 66 days, and it was stormy. That's why it took so long. A big part of the story about their crossing was the unusual severe storms they encountered that took them way off course, for example. The Heritage Fig Tree in Los Angeles collapsed 66 days before the news about Obama's A Promised Land. On the same day that the St. Louis Blues won their prophetic Game 7 hockey game in St. Louis that began at 7 p.m., with a winning goal scored by St. Louis hometown hero player number 7, and again 7 days before Israel's birthday. This was a 3 sets of 7 that symbolized judgment at the gate for America, because it's the home of the Gateway Arch, St. Louis. This news about Obama and the prophetic game in St. Louis on May 7th, 2019 was exactly 7 plus 7 times 7 months before this date here, which is the 7th of the month. But before I continue any further, when the Israelites marched around, they marched around once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, they marched around 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. It was, in fact, a 7 plus a 7 times 7, which, by the way, is equal to 56. So I'll just repeat this here. The news about Obama and the prophetic hockey game in St. Louis, and that's, again, judgment and three sets of 7 symbolizes judgment. This date that this occurred, these 2 signs, was May 7th, 2019. And it was exactly 7 plus 7 times 7 months before the 7th of the month in January 2024, when the door of the Alaska, and Alaska is the 7 times 7th state to join the Union, the 49th state, Airlines plane was discovered. Okay, the news story, it was a prophetic sign, but the more prophetic aspect of the sign, believe it or not, was the discovery of the door's plane, because it was a mystery as to where it had landed. It had fallen off over a neighborhood of Portland, Oregon. But 2 days after it fell off, it was discovered in someone's backyard. The owner of the yard looked out and realized that it was in his backyard. And then on that day, the NTSB showed up, and God has been using the National Transportation Safety Board frequently in his signs, so that's also confirming that it is a sign, because that's the day that the NTSB was involved in recovering the door. And also, that was the day, and this is important, that Alaska Airlines announced that it was that it was grounding 65 of its planes, affecting 23,000 passengers, and 65 is the 23rd semi-prime number, a number that is only divisible by 2 other prime numbers. And also on that day, United Airlines announced that it was canceling 230 flights, which also hinted at the number 23. That is because Barack Obama is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. He is the 44th president, and this is why he pairs 44 and 23 together in his signs to confirm the signs and connections. That's why this date involving the number 23, when the door was found, is in turn 44 plus 44 days before it is predicted that the 7 times 7th, as in 49th, vice president will die in a plane crash on the date 4-4. So you got that? The date 4-4 is 44 plus 44 days after the plane mishap sign involving the door, all right, that crashed to the ground, and the 44 plus 44 days to the date 4-4, which also hints at 44, are confirmed with the second witness of the signs involving the number 23. But also, this 7 plus 7 times 7 months connection is followed by a connection to the predicted death of the 7 times 7th vice president, which is a connection that goes through a sign that hints at the 7 times 7th state, the 49th state, because of the name of the airline, Alaska Airlines. So it's just amazing. So in other words, here we have now the explanation for how this Clint Eastwood Unforgiven story connects to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. I already previously mentioned how it connected to the date it is predicted that Obama will become the president again. All right? And now we have both connections explained in this story involving Clint Eastwood and the movie Unforgiven, which is a prophetic sign from God that is communicating that America is unforgiven and is about to be judged and destroyed through the Antichrist, Barack Obama. Harris's predicted death in a plane crash is predicted to be in St. Louis. That's the other thing here. So we've got the connection from the St. Louis Blues game and Obama in May of 2019, which connects to the Alaska Airlines incident, which in turn connects to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis. And her plane crash is predicted to be as she is on a voyage across the country to Los Angeles, which of course hints at the voyage of Lewis and Clark to find a passageway across the country to the West Coast where the fig tree collapsed in Los Angeles. Also, the Pilgrims were on a voyage, and that's the big part of this story. Arguably, the biggest part of all of the story that I've been explaining here in this video is that America was founded on a relationship with God, one of only two nations in the history of the world, Israel and America, and that is being demonstrated in this story through the story of the Pilgrims. That is the underlying theme here. It's the big theme here, right? Okay. And what I mean by that too is that it's in contrast with how America has departed from its foundation in Jesus. Okay. Harris's death in a plane crash in St. Louis will lead to the rise of the 48th president, Barack Obama. This 7 months plus 7 times 7 months connection from the news of Obama's A Promised Land book to the discovery of the plane's door is also exactly 4 years and 8 months, which hints at the rise of the 48th president through a plane crash. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.